All right, welcome to Be the Market Expert. So let's kick it off with this. Let's kick it off with the government shutdown, and this is your live coverage of this thing. I'm getting conflicting messages, whether it's happened or not. It looks like they're still voting. But here's where we're at. So we're in day number 28, and what this is looking like right now is to get the government open. It's actually been shut down 13 times now. And what they're doing right now with the vote is 54 to 45. And so we need 60 to get to the finish line. And I don't know if you guys are following this, but there's a lot of just information out there about what the dollars are at this point. What's interesting is depending on where you get your news from, this thing started off as a around Medicare, right? It was around Medicare, and it was around that we want these Medicare provisions in here, and the Republicans were saying, we'll talk about it later, but we're not gonna put that in now. So sign in good faith, and we'll talk about it. That was like the big conversation. But now, as you kind of go through, it doesn't necessarily look like that's what the conversation's around anymore. Kind of interesting. But the big thing as we're going through is really into two things. I think that we're seeing the Republican side of things is figuring out, like, is there any way that they can go through and pay some people? And remember, the game plan with this current administration is this: we get sued, we get sued. We'll figure it out later. At least we'll be able to get our agenda going forward, and then we'll figure it out as the lawsuit goes through. And just think about like where we are right now with the government shutdown, right? We're talking super backlogged. So like the second bullet point is interesting, only in the sense to where, if they do want to do whatever they want to do, they could pretty much do it and then just face the lawsuit later and kind of figure it out. The other interesting thing that we're seeing right now is that these union reps, the union reps that have historically backed Democrats, are coming through and they're saying, okay, well, enough's enough, and just blame it on us. So go through and just pass the bill. You guys fought your fight. You guys had this thing going for 28 days now. Well, yesterday was 27. Today's the 28th. And here's the thing: blame it on us. Say that the unions were no longer going to support you, and we were your biggest advocates, and that you needed to fold because of us. And so we'll see what that does. Now, here's the deal. This is the one that, again, we've been talking about a lot lately, is that come November 1, we're going to see some major impacts around SNAP, right? And your SNAP is truly your food stamps, essentially, right? It's your food stamp program. And so I don't know if you guys have been even just diving into the Colorado side of things, but even like the Salvation Army is taking donations. They're taking food donations from their food pantry, right? So this isn't like this is their food pantry side of things. And they're going through, and instead of the government assistance that they would typically get for the money to and the food and everything, they're saying, hey, please drop us off food. And again, guys, like, this is the one that I think is big. Again, we're seeing some people. I think last week was the first week that we started to see people not get paid. Like the good majority of people not getting paid. And November 1, so we're talking a couple days from now, is when we're gonna actually see people not eating, which I think is a pretty big deal. So what they're doing right now is they said, 36 minutes ago. And I keep refreshing this just because I want to know, like, what is the outcome? Because it does, like I said, it does look like they're still debating on the floor, even though I've seen some conflicting messages. But it says the Senate is now holding the 13th, and it says Republicans are hoping to increase pressure from the SNAP freeze, and the largest federal workers union is saying that, hey, we're hoping that this thing gets pushed and we're going to get it passed. It also goes through and it says not a high level of interest. Neither party wants to see like a partial bill going through where they're going in and they're carving out different portions and saying, hey, let's pay these people, let's pay these people, we'll leave this one on the table, because at the end of the day, they're all bargaining chips. Unfortunately, we, the people, are the bargaining chips as we go through, and they're holding out on both sides. So we go through, it looks like this. And then a part of this conversation was, hey, does President Trump actually think he's going to go for a third term? And I think that it goes through and says, we think he's just trolling, but who really knows with President Trump? So, guys, there's your government shutdown news. Hopefully we get some concrete answers here soon. Again, I've seen some conflicting stuff, but they started at 9:30 our time. And again, this looks like live coverage. It looks like they're still doing some stuff. So we'll figure it out as it happens. So about this. This came from NAR. The silver tsunami in real estate is here. And are you ready? And first and foremost, the silver tsunami is not real. This is a figment of someone's imagination, right? We talk about the silver tsunami. We talk about the Airbnb bust. We talk about the housing bubble, the housing crash. Insert whatever garbage here. I think it's all clickbait. Obviously so, because I clicked on it. And this came out yesterday from NAR again. So here's what the silver tsunami is. It's saying, hey, some old people are going to come to age and they're going to sell their house. Like, that's what this thing is. So this is what the silver tsunami, they're like, hey, these people are going to get old and they're going to downsize. And guess what? They're all these people are going to get old all at the same time. And they're going to just send their houses. So it says more than 70 million Americans are now aged 65 or older. Baby boomers between the age of 60 and 78. So we're talking about the baby boomer population. And so when we're looking at the baby boomer population, this is what they're saying. They're saying, hey, these guys have these houses and they're going to want to downsize now. And they're either going to go to assisted living, not really assisted, but senior living centers, right? We're seeing those pop up all over the place. They're going to go to one of those. They're going to go move in with their kids. And we could see the flip side of this coin where the kids move in with them and the kids do something with their house. Now, here's the deal. I'm not saying that's not going to happen. I'm just saying that it's not going to happen at scale, because there's a couple different things. While we do know this, the baby boomer population has the most wealth across all the generations in the United States right now, across all generations in the world. But let's talk about the United States, because that's what impacts us. So you have the baby boomer population that has been aging in place, and they have these houses, the houses you grew up in. All right, so the houses you grew up in, these bigger houses, these 2,500 square foot plus homes. And historically speaking, this is what happens. You grow up, you go off to college, you meet your significant other, you get married, you are living in a condo or an apartment, and then you decide to have babies. And you say, oh my goodness, this condo or apartment is not big enough for us and our babies. We want to start this family. And now we go look at a house in the suburbs. And guess what? There's an old person that is now like, you know what? I don't need this big house anymore. It's time for me to downsize. And you buy the old person's house, and the older person goes into a smaller home. And that is the circle of life from The Lion King. I'm hearing that song play in my head right now. And that's what traditionally happened. But guess what? We know since 2019, we have not had a normal market, right? 2020, global pandemic broke everything. Everything is broken. And with that brokenness, what we're having is baby boomers stay in place. And that's what I really believe is happening. We're having baby boomers saying, like, listen, here's the deal. There's no houses that I truly want to buy. And so I'm not going to go through, I'm not going to sell my house and go buy a home. Or, they're on some kind of assistance program, right? They're on their silver tsunami years, and they're getting some kind of subsidies from the government, and they don't want to go pick up a mortgage and make some payments or do whatever because interest rates are so high. And keep in mind that prices are higher than they've been, right? And so we have all this perfect storm of stuff happening. So I truly believe that these baby boomers are going to age in place and they are going to live out in their homes. And then I actually believe that their millennial kids are going to inherit the houses. But this article wants you to believe something else. This article wants you to believe that 70 million adults are between the age of 60 and 78. I'm not disputing that. But what they're saying is, hey, you know what? Their big home that they've grown comfortably in, that they're living in, they're not going to want to live in it any longer because it's just too much upkeep. And they're going to have to sell. And then we're going to have this flood of real estate that's going to land on the market, and home prices are going to come down because whatever. And that's just simply not the case. We haven't seen this, but this is what they're talking about. They're talking about downsizing and right sizing. And this is why what we're seeing, guys, we're seeing a lot of people, we're seeing prices stay elevated. And this is one of the biggest reasons why. There's not a whole lot of inventory that's going onto the market. Right? So we can talk about how long homes are sitting, but yet here's the deal. This is the other flip side of this coin. The homes that are sitting, they have so much equity attached to them for the most part. I get there's outliers, but for the most part, there's so much equity attached to these homes that these people are not in any situation where they have to sell. This isn't 2008 where they're all underwater. So homes are sitting for a little bit longer, and they're sitting for a little bit longer. And guess what? The right buyer does pop up eventually. They purchase the home, and we have one less piece of inventory on the board. So as we go through this, it's saying only about 10% of homes nationwide are fully prepared for senior living. And they're going through and they're trying to justify why these people that have grown up in their house are going to say, now's the time for me to leave my home. And again, historically speaking, I would have said this is correct, but I just don't think that there's anywhere for them to really go. And with things being super expensive, and where we typically would have saw someone go into one of these 55 plus communities, think about how expensive those are right now. Those are so expensive to go live in. And I get that they have equity in their home. Their home's probably paid off. I understand that they have most of the wealth, but they don't want to go spending their $3,000, $4,000 a month on average, especially here in Colorado, to go to a 55 plus community. Even though they got all the amenities, they rather just stay at their houses. We'll see how this plays through, but I just don't believe this is real. I actually think this multi-generational is more real. But with this multi-generational, this is what I think happens. I think that the kids probably move in with mom and dad because mom and dad have a bigger house. And then the kids are most likely renting their home for some passive income. They could sell it. That could happen. But yeah, this is actually what I believe more so, this multi-generational. So we'll see how this thing plays out. But every couple of years, this silver tsunami pops back up just because of this age demographic owning homes, and they're going to sell it. I want to switch gears though, and let's talk about the Zillow market price revised forecast. So this thing's looking over 400 markets. Obviously, we are one of these markets because we're a fairly big market. And it says Zillow slightly upgrades its national home price outlook. Now, I was sitting on a Zoom meeting for what felt like 12 hours with Elizabeth and Kevin yesterday. It was really only 2. And we were forecasting how many sales we think we're going to do in 2026, how many of those are going to be buy sides, how many of those are going to be sell sides, the average price point, all of that fun stuff. Like we went through, we're talking about how much agents are going to be getting in commissions. Like this is literally something we have to do every year. And it's super exciting. Anyways, so we're sitting and we're doing this. And we're looking at like what we think is going to happen. Same thing with what Zillow does. We all just look at our crystal ball and we look at historical data and we're like, okay, based off of historical data and what we think is going to happen, this is where we believe that we're going to land. So we're doing this project, like I said, for 12 hours yesterday. And one of the things that we're talking about is prices on homes. Like, do we think prices of homes are going to go up? Do we think they're going to go down? And then we have to defend why we think that. That's one of the biggest things that we have to do. We have to defend why we're going to do it because, again, we're budget planning. We're doing all these things. And so one of the biggest wild cards that we've kind of talked about a little bit, and hopefully everyone's paying attention, is the Fed. Jerome Powell will no longer be at the head of the table next year. And so what this looks like is this: the president of the United States gets to pick the next Fed president, the head of the table. And Jerome Powell will get a seat at the table, but he will not be the ultimate decision maker anymore. And what happens from there is the Senate has to confirm it. All right. So it does have to go through the Senate. We need Senate approval. But yet, here's the deal, everyone. What is the current administration's stance? Well, it's affordability. And they cannot force home sale prices to go down. So what can they do? They can change interest rates. So crystal ball, you have to believe that whoever the president taps is going to be aligned with the president's policy, just like how it has been over all these other nominations in 2025. All right. So the president says, like, hey, these are my core values. This is the platform that I ran on. This is how I want to govern. Are you with me? And they say, yes, I'm with you. And he puts them in a place of power. And then it goes through the committees and the hearings and everything, and they get confirmed. Same thing's going to happen. Yet, the same thing's going to happen in 2026 for this term period. And this term period is going to be the people that set policy on what the cost of money from the federal bank to First Bank, to Chase Bank, to Mitch Friedman, right? Like all of these different things, like they are setting the policy on what the cost of money and everything else is going to be. And remember, we have this dual mandate, right? The Fed has a dual mandate. And the dual mandate is this: hey, we need to make sure that we have the cost of money is affordable while we're keeping inflation at bay. And we understand that is not real. It's crazy. There's a lot of economists out there. They're like, how in the world is this our dual mandate? Because these things are polar opposites. And this is what these guys are trying to do. Well, so what have we been seeing recently? Well, we've been seeing inflation going back up a little bit. They got inflation under control, and that was the whole thing over the last couple of years, is we got to get inflation under control. We got to get inflation under control. And so how do you get inflation under control? Well, you make the cost of money more expensive. You make the cost of money more expensive, people stop spending it, and then inflation starts getting to a point where it is level to where their parameters are. All right. And so that's how inflation got a little bit wonky, is we had this global pandemic and people stopped spending money. People were getting sent home from work. People were getting sent home from school. The craziness that we ran into. Well, no one's spending money because they can't go out. They can't do anything. So what did they do? Well, they made the cost of money less. What happens when the cost of money is less? Well, you see people go buy houses in our case because it's so much more affordable. And so you go out and you go purchase a house because money's free. What else happens? Well, people expand their businesses. People go out and they go get loans. They hire more employees. They go and they sell more widgets. All of that happens. Well, when you start raising the cost of money, what happens? Well, you guys are living it. People buy less houses. So people buy less houses, expansion starts to slow down. But the issue, though, is that's how they're trying to get inflation back in line. Well, so we've been living in these elevated rates, right? We're all in there. We all feel this. We're disproportionately affected as real estate agents, especially in Colorado, with our average price point being $600,000. That pumps the brakes on a lot of people purchasing real estate. And so we've been feeling this. Well, what's been happening? Well, inflation is still going up, right? Like cost of eggs really haven't gone down. I mean, they've gone down, but they're getting back up there. The cost of meat is up there, right? We're seeing all this. Well, that doesn't make any sense because they're restricting the flow of money. And so people should be spending less and consuming less. And so prices should come back down. They're not. So now what do we have? We have people getting laid off. We have less money that is going and flowing into the ecosystems. And at the same time, inflation's going up. And they don't know what is happening right now. We could say tariffs, we could say policy, we could say government shutdown, we could say all these different things, and yet there's no one thing that they can point to. So what do we believe that we're going to see? Crystal ball time, new Fed president that is going to be aligned with the current administration. The current administration says, well, hey, I get it. Inflation is probably going to go up. Things are going to get more expensive, but guess what? Money's going to be cheaper and people are going to go borrow money, and hopefully we can be adults about it. Now, we all understand on this call that people are going to go buy stupid stuff with cheaper money. but hopefully some good stuff happens as well. So we're going to see this thing play out. But Zillow did the same thing. They went through, right? Segue all the way back, Charles, is that Zillow went through and Zillow's putting out their forecast. They revised it. So here you see, if you're in the red, that means that we're going to have less active homes, right? It's a circle size by number of active homes, and this is your price change. So bigger red circle means you're going to have a lot of homes that are taking an 8% price decrease. Big blue circle, you're going to see a lot of homes take a price increase. Well, let's go down to us. Here's your geography lesson. And you guys are this square. Welcome to Colorado. Well, here you go, guys. There's no red here. They're saying that we're going to be flat to slightly increase, right? Like our slightly increase, because look how small those circles are. This is the circle, right? It ain't the big circle. It's the small circle, maybe slightly in between the two circles. All right. So this is where Zillow's predicting based off of all their analytics. And keep in mind, this is what Zillow does. They have traffic going through. They can see people going in. They also have vendor partners that are going in and they're pulling data, whether it is mortgage application data, raising their hand to talk to a real estate agent. All this stuff is happening. And so this is what they're predicting. So this is what we're going to think. This is what I would say. Home prices are going to stay out. They're going to stay flat to slightly elevated. Cool. Interest rates are coming down. Crystal ball. We're going to publish it. Charles says interest rates are coming down. So what should we be doing? We need to be having conversations with our people. Guys, this is going to be a perfect storm. I don't think this looks like 2021 by any extent of the imagination, but you've had people sitting on the sidelines for so long, waiting for something to happen. And guess what? All signs are pointing to something's going to happen. We've already seen people go through and purchase more real estate with interest rates coming down slightly. You have to believe with the administration's policy and them actually getting to handpick the person that they want in the seat that is going to align with their policy. And we're going to see interest rates come down here in Q2. Be looking for it. Let's go through here. Denver Business Journal. Just want to put this on your radar, guys. Master plan community debuts, model home sales. So if you guys go through here, this is Westminster. So Westminster, they're going through and it will feature 4 distinct neighborhoods, 2,350 units. Guys, they're going to go through 2,350 units. Okay, so you're telling me 2,350 units of brand new developers coming out, and you're telling me that real estate's in a bad place. We're going to see this silver tsunami with this whole flood of housing happening. Plus, no one's buying real estate because of interest rates, guys. Some smart people are seeing some things change. So they're going through here. This is what this is looking like. They're going to go build it. And again, it's Westminster. I think it's Dreamfinder Homes is who the builder is. If you go through here, it says includes that they got this Berkeley home, 2,100 square feet. They got a 3.5 bathroom or 2.5 bath home that has 3 bedrooms, 1,900 square foot home. There's a 1,600 square foot home. All of these models have a 2-car garage. And so as you go through here, you can look, here's kind of their breakdown. It says 202 single family, 203 townhomes, 11 paired homes, right? They're going through, they're doing all these different things. That it says residential, approximately 250 lots for development in the works. So you go in here, and I believe this was like 88th and Federal is where I saw this.
Yeah, that's correct, Charles. It's right there on the west side there.
Perfect. Thank you, Dale. Yeah, so 88th and Federal is where this thing is. And if you guys look, I think it said it started at 500. So I feel like that's just the sign. That's just the number that they put on the sign. And then it's increased immediately. So the sign reads in the mid 500s, and you might be able to walk out above that. So guys, I would say check it out, go through here. They're going to be spending some money. Brand new homes. This is exciting. This is close to home. They said they haven't really done anything like this for some time now, is where they've gone through and they haven't really built any homes close to us, at least in Westminster. And so this is something we need to be looking at. Let's
Yeah, I've
switch.
heard a lot of controversy on this development too. Even though the builder says they're in the 500s or mid 500s, they're pushing the sixes and up.
They never, right? Like, I don't care what the price of the home says it is on the sign these days. Like, maybe it starts with good intention, but it's never that price ever, because you're talking base model and they're like, well, that's the house. But if you want it on a piece of land, which we assume you do, that's where we're going to start the bidding, right? So it's interesting. Cool, cool. Weekly home sales. Let's look at Logan Motors Xiaomi. Let's talk about some national data. It says recent housing data has been volatile due to holiday timing and the Amazon outage. So I don't know if anyone else got impacted by this, but I think I was talking to Elizabeth about this as well, where command goes down for a couple minutes and we're all losing our minds over command being down. And then Amazon goes down for hours, impacting so many more people. And like, I'm talking big companies were impacted by this. So guys, we look at this thing, it says mortgage rates remain near 2025 lows. Cool. So let's look into this thing. Let's look at pending sales. Check this out, guys. So seasonality, right? Real estate agents go to sleep in like 3 days. They go to sleep as jack-o'-lanterns. And then we won't see anyone until they become an Easter bunny in 2026, right? Historically speaking, that's what happens. But we got this little bit of a bump, right? Significantly more than what we typically see this time of year. And so your weekly pending sales is saying that, hey, people are starting to do some stuff. But Charles, there's a government shutdown. Yeah, guys, like we're looking at this thing. And when you guys have heard me talk about this, I think the biggest impact that we're seeing to our people is the people that are on their food stamps, right? Like, and that's horrible. And we have a way to impact it, and we should all be figuring out how we can help these people make sure that they eat. One of the core main things that we need as a society is food. And yet when we look at this, people are still buying houses. So the government shutdown is not impacting real estate for the most part, right? Like, we went through on Coffee Talk and just asked, like, who's seen impact? And like Mitch is like, yeah, a couple of deals have had an impact, but for the most part, guys, it's not doing a whole lot. Like, this doesn't necessarily impact our business, the business of helping people find real estate, finding shelter. So you look at this, national new listings. Well, look at this spike. This is out of the norm. We're seeing houses hit the market. Guys, we're headed into the holiday seasons and more homes are coming online right now. You know what's also going to be interesting? Again, I don't know what your guys' 2026 vision boards look like and your GPSs, but yet what I can almost guarantee you what you're going to see is you're going to see an influx on January 1 expired homes. Now, here's the deal. We always see more homes hit the expired listing data on January 1st. Always. But what I'm saying is you're going to see even more. I couldn't give you a percentage, but we're going to see more homes that have been sitting on the market that have expired. And guess what? I think there's going to be some real opportunity for some people, right? You guys want your businesses to explode. I'd be thinking about what neighborhoods that I want to farm and maybe get some stuff ready to go drop off some information. But this is interesting. We've seen a spike. We're seeing more single family or new listings, single family listings at the market. Here's your price cuts. Guys, we're sitting at 41. Let's call it 42%. Let's round up. 42% of all homes sitting on the MLS have taken a price cut. Now, someone reached out to me from Canyon City the other day and was like, Charles, do you service Canyon City? And I'm like, no. But they went through and they were asking me, they said, hey, I got a real estate agent. And I'm like, an active one? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, well, let's hold the phone. I can't really have a conversation with you, but I do have a question. And we started talking about this principle of substitution, which it's funny that we're having to have this conversation more so and more so now just because of the environment that we're living in. And so if you were a recent real estate student, like you're probably like, oh yeah, the principle of substitution, totally get it. If you haven't been in real estate school in quite some time, you've probably forgot what the principle of substitution is, but you know what it is, right? It's this. The cheapest home is always going to win. If I got two houses, apples to apples, I'm not going to go spend $15,000 more for the same product. I'm going to choose the cheaper product. So there's only two things that we can do. And keep in mind that most people run away from pain. And so what do we have? We have two things that we can do to make sure that our home looks the best. We could either drop the price or we can make improvements to the home. That's the only two things we can really do. We can make our house look better than everyone, or we can compete on price. Well, what's the easier of the two? Now I get mentally and like my heart, right? My feelings say like, I don't want to drop the price of my home because I think my home is worth X and da 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 whatever. And maybe I'll wait till the springtime. And yet there's more rational people. They're like, let's drop the price because the only other option I have is to redo the kitchen. And that's still not guaranteed to sell anything. So what is the least amount of effort that I can do to make my home look the best? And that's why we're seeing 42% of all homes take a price cut right now. They started too high. They said, let's swing for the fences. Let's see what we can get. I don't need to sell, right? We're hearing that too. I don't need to sell. And the question needs to be, why did you call me then? Why did you call me to list your house if you didn't need to sell it? And then we just need to go back to their motivations. So that's why we're seeing 42%. Guys, this is pretty high. 22, again, is an outlier. 22 is weird because that's when we started seeing interest rates skyrocket up. These people were under contract on some houses. Now they're panicking and they started doing some really big price cuts. That's why we saw this. So here's where the last couple of years have been, because this is more of a normal market. And here we are again. What does this tell me? Golden handcuffs are off. People aren't sitting in place waiting for interest rates to drop. They're selling their home. They picked out a home. Now they're being more reasonable and getting some price cuts in there so that they can get their house sold and get onto their new home. Well, let's look at this purchase application data. Well, here's your jack-o'-lanterns, right? We're seeing this, but here's the deal. We can see that the trend line is going down. But here's the more important thing. We're still above 2024. Yes, we're seeing less people versus the last couple of weeks raise their hand to say, hey, I want to know what I qualify for. But yet we're still seeing more people than this time last year raise their hand. And I want to make sure that we understand that difference looking at this data. This data is not saying that, hey, we're seeing less people raise their hand. We're seeing less people versus the last couple of weeks raise their hand. We're still seeing more people versus last year raise their hand. Significantly more, right? Significantly more people. And so when we're going through here, guys, this is what this tells me. Yes, there could be some refinances. All right. Yes, these people could be looking to refi their home. These people are getting tired of sitting on the sidelines, everyone. People go through, they get married, they have babies, they outgrow their home, and they need a bigger house. And that's where we're living. We are living in a shift. Our job is to find the motivated. People are having babies are flying the coop, right? That's your silver tsunami. We're also seeing people get married. They need bigger houses because it's weird to live in your parents' basement. So they want their own space, right? We're seeing all of these different things that are happening. Death, divorce, everything. Our job is to find motivated. Well, your inventory, here we are, guys. I told you, we're going to cross this line. I still feel good about it. We have 18% more inventory this year versus last year, currently on the market. 18% more inventory. And guess what? We literally just saw someone betting big on Westminster where they're like, we're putting in more houses. We need more inventory. Because, guys, here's the deal. The American dream's not dead. The only reason why people are not flocking out in droves to go buy real estate right now is because the cost of money. Now, if they find the home that checks the check boxes, they're willing to spend it. We're just seeing a lot more people that are raising their hand and saying, listen, this got to be my forever home, or at least close to it, because if I buy it now and it's going to be so expensive, who knows what interest rates are going to do. And so I don't want to have to move again. And so people are looking to make sure these homes check more of the check boxes before making the leap. And that's where we're living. And so you got 18% more inventory. This line is going to cross, but here's the deal. There's more people. Remember, the other circle of life, people have babies. They need bigger houses. The population gets bigger because guess what? Those babies eventually have more babies. Also, immigration policy. Now, I get it, not the political kind that has been captivated in the news, but we have pretty loose immigration policy, especially if you look at us compared to Japan. People come into the United States, and guess what they do? They buy houses because it's legal. And so they buy homes. And so we have this increasing population, and it's taking more inventory off the board. So we need all this inventory. I get this not selling as quickly, but we need it. We're not going to talk about the 10-year treasury or the yields, but here we are. It says we have a lot of economic news this week in the Fed week, and the Fed week will be cutting rates, but the verbiage of the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, uses is key. Guys, guess what? People are watching the news, and depending on what Jerome Powell says, is either going to scare people or excite people. And so if he goes through and he starts talking about how doom and gloom it is, it's going to scare some people. If he goes through and talks about how they're thinking about doing some stuff to stimulate the economy, it's going to excite some people. And that is going to make the stock traders and the bond traders and everyone else do what they do, and it's going to impact our market. So bond auctions are happening. Pending home sales data, it says could be interesting because of the government shutdown and the delayed closings. And again, I don't think that we're necessarily seeing it on our side of the world, but yet we do know there are people, especially the ones that are living next to the water, like Florida, probably being impacted. If you thought that New Orleans was host before, I'm sure it's even worse right now, right? And so we're going through and we're seeing all these things. It says home price indexes are coming out this week, and we already saw Zillow revise theirs. And so we know that these are all lag. These are all rear view mirror because, again, while we're going through and we might be crystal balling some of this stuff in this closed environment where we want to just be the most educated real estate agents and have some of these discussions. So when we go back into the world, a lot of people aren't willing to rubber stamp this kind of stuff because they could be wrong. So that's why we look at rear view facing data for the most part. But let's talk about mortgage rates. This is your month so far. This is October 1 to really yesterday. This isn't today. I think this actually cut off yesterday. Yep, cut off yesterday. Now, I do like what the 30-year conforming looks like. While we did see this a little bit of a slope, this is a pretty steady line. This is solid. Go ahead, Dale, hit me with it.
So, I'm hearing what you're saying about all of this, but here's the other caveat that I think maybe we're not taking into effect is all of this large corporations that are announcing layoffs, like huge layoffs. It's going to affect our housing market also. So new purchase business is going to go down because people can't afford it. Like Amazon's going to start using AI for a lot of their stuff. They're laying off a ton of people. Google, Microsoft, all these companies are starting to lay people off. That's going to be another ripple effect on our market, don't you believe?
I think depending on what it looks like, I think it kind of goes back even to the SNAP benefits, and this is going to come off really, really insensitive. And I apologize ahead of time, but I want you guys all to really hear this. I don't think the people that are going to be laid off are necessarily the home purchasers. Yes, there's going to be a handful of them in the grand scheme of things, but they're not laying off your top affluent people that are really going out and purchasing real estate, especially here in Colorado. Right. So when we look at this and we're talking about like the top earners that are going through, and we understand that those people have to make north of $100,000 to live in Colorado, I don't think those are necessarily the people that are being laid off. And if they are, especially when we're talking about like the coders and everything that are at some of these companies, I don't know if they are necessarily homeowners to begin with. And a lot of them were probably digital nomads to begin with, and they're not living in Colorado right now. So I don't know if there's necessarily going to affect our market, I guess is what I'm saying, because what we're seeing people transplant in that are making decent amount of money, while the other people that are unfortunately are being priced out are moving to the Midwest.
Yeah, I mean, like I've got a client right now that is in the IT world. He's been unemployed for 7 months, can't get a job. And because, he needs to make, 6 figures plus income, and he's not willing to take a less pay. And so, we sold his house, I don't know, 3.5 years ago, and he's renting. And he was like, God, I thought I was going to be able to buy a house. But every time I turn around, I get a job and I last for 3, 4, 5 months. They lay me off and I have to go start again. He's been unemployed for over 6 months now. So, I mean, these are high-tech people too, not just the, entry-level jobs that are getting cut. And it's kind of crazy that, obviously AI is taken over. And he even said it. He goes, I came from the world. I've been in the IT world for 24 years. He said, and AI is taken over everything. He said, we're all going to be in a predicament before we know it.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, right? That we're going through, and I don't know if you guys have seen these debates, and not necessarily debates, but the conversation about how, right, we sent all the millennials off to college and we told them they had to go get these degrees in these worlds and taught them how to code and do all this stuff. And now, the plumbers are the ones making $100,000. The welders are the ones making all the money because we said that, hey, you don't want to be a laborer. And now the laborers are the ones that are crushing it. And I mean, all reality, I think that we kind of look back, it's no different. Things are going to have to change. Yes, I'm not going to disagree there. Things are going to have to change, right? We broke everything with the Industrial Revolution, right? To where we sent all these people to go work and to build lots and lots of widgets, and it broke home life and all kinds of other stuff. Like, I'm not disputing that. I think that's very real. And yes, but I think that what I think I also heard you say is, what, 3 years ago, he went through and sold his house and has just been playing with house money at this point. And now he's realized that he's outpriced in Colorado, which we've been talking about for years. Like, there's only been one time in recent history, back in 2006, when Dale, I think it's like you and you are the only ones on the call right now that have really lived through that sales time period. Where most of us can't relate to that conversation. But that's been really the only time where we've actually seen loss in home sales across the board for prices. And so we'll just have to see where it plays out. Again, what will also happen is, if interest rates go down, we'll also see more people come onto the scene to purchase. And I don't know if it's going to be a 1-to-1 ratio, right? You have these people that are being laid off from these tech jobs and these big companies. But again, if the interest rates drop down and it's more affordable to pay people, will we see more people back in the field? And that's just the outlier that we don't understand. Yes, we want to see profit. We are all for profit companies. We know that the two ways to increase profit is our leases or our employers or employees. And we can't really get out of a lease because they have contracts and significant penalties associated with them. So the easier way is to fire people. And yet, when we look at this thing, I think interest rates solve a lot of this. We've just been living in a world where interest rates have been so expensive. The only way to do something instead of innovate is to fire people. So we'll see. Don't disagree with you, Dale. I just don't know. So I like to see the conforming. The conforming is pretty flat. This is the one that gets a little bit interesting. Like, these weird spikes, I think, is what excites people. And when you get too much excitement, that's when you get hesitation and you wait for the bottom because, hey, this was the top for some reason. And now we're waiting for more valleys. And we think that we're always going to be in a peak. So we're waiting for the next valley to happen. So as we're going through, I do like these lines. They look way better than this, because this is what made a lot of people hesitate and not pull the trigger on real estate, because they were trying to time the market. So when we look at something like this, outside of this weird spike right here, this is what gives people calm and security about, now feels like the right time to list, because it doesn't look like interest rates are doing anything. With that, everyone, I think that as we're going through, we'll see what the government does. Like I said, I haven't seen anything new, but we're seeing a lot more pressure to get this thing signed, which is good, because again, the thing that I don't want to see is people go hungry. That is the worst thing that I could possibly imagine.